What you would leave out of it, you can leave behind the sweet potatoes. We don't need those. But Paula would not be happy though if you did that. So don't do that. Well, the aspiring psychiatrists were attending a first class on emotional extremes, and just to establish some parameters, the professor said to the students from Arkansas, he says, "What is the opposite of joy?" And the Arkansas student says, "Sadness." And what's the opposite of depression? And this time he asked a young lady who happened to be from Oklahoma, and she said, "Elation." "And you, sir," and he looked down, and the man was from Texas. And he says, "How about, what is the opposite of woe?" And of course the Texan says, "Sir, I believe that would be giddy up." Yeah. I don't know how you're feeling today with all that's going on. Maybe you're feeling a little bit of woe. But I want to look at preparing for Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving preparation. You could call it that if you want. I don't know. Somebody else should help me with titles here. But as we get ready for it, there's some things that we can do that help make our heart right for being thankful. And so I want to look and hope you concentrate this week on preparing that heart and making it ready to give thanks. Because some things just jump right in our life, and they try to put a roadblock to our thankfulness. They try to blot it out, they try to cover it up so that we can't see all that we have to be thankful for, because you and I have to admit it, we got an awful lot to be thankful for. But we have a lot of problems, a lot of stuff, a lot of things that get in our way. In one of those very spiritual movies, VeggieTales episodes there, King George and the Ducky there. Larry the Cucumber here is King George, and Bob the Tomato is his faithful servant Louis there. And this royalty there, their kingdom, castles and power and treasures. But all of this does not appeal to King George, but what he loves to do is to take a bath with his rubber ducky. You got to imagine this cartoon if you're not there, sorry. But he says, I love my duck. And he shares that. But one day while standing on the royal balcony, he looks out and he peers through the binoculars, and his eyes grow wide with desire because he sees something wonderful. And he says, he's Billy, and Billy's over there, and he's bathing with his rubber ducky on his balcony. And Billy's rubber duck looks exactly like King George's rubber duck, but that doesn't matter. He wants Billy's anyway. He says, I want it, he covets it. And Louis reminds him that he already has a duck, and that other duck belongs to someone else. Well, of course, that didn't matter to King George. He wanted it, and would not take anything else for an answer there. Are you saying I shouldn't have whatever I want? He says, as Larry says, as the king. And Louis opens up this very large wardrobe, and you can just imagine it open up, and it's just totally full of these yellow rubber ducks there. If I could just jog your memory, you already have quite a few ducks, he says. King George's rationale is simple. He shoots a condescending look at his unlearned servant and says, those are yesterday's ducks. Well, someone else has a new duck, and King George wanted it. Of course, they use these cute cartoons to present a very ugly problem. And you see that faced as David faced that with his desire for Bathsheba and the sin that went along with it. We face a struggle of coveting, wanting that which is not ours and belongs to somebody else. And Matter of fact, if you look at 1 Kings chapter 21, you'll see another man coveting here, another one, a king. And in 1 Kings chapter 21, Ahab sees Naboth's vineyard and thinks that that is something that he needs. So, it just made sense. It's one of those common sense types of things. Here he is with the palace, and right next to the palace is this vineyard, and it would be so handy to have that right there. So if you follow along, and if you find 1 Kings, it's not too hard to find in the Old Testament there. You see all those 1st and 2nd books there? Well, looky there, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. You get to Chronicles, you've been too far, right? 1 Kings chapter 21. We'll start with verse 1 here. Now it came about after these things that Naboth, the Jezreelite, had a vineyard which was in Jezreel, beside the palace of Ahab, the king of Samaria. Ahab spoke to Naboth, saying, "Give me your vineyard, that I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it is close beside my house, and I will give you a better vineyard than is in its place. If you like, I'll give you the price of it in money." But Naboth said to Ahab, "The Lord forbid me that I should give to you the inheritance of my fathers." So Ahab came into his house sullen and vexed because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For he said, "I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers." And he lay down on his bed and turned away his face and ate no food. This guy's upset about not having a vegetable garden, isn't he? Well, then there's always somebody who will help you out, right? And you're familiar with the name Jezebel? If you're taking advice from Jezebel, be careful there. Verse 5, "But Jezebel his wife came to him and said to him, 'How is it that your spirit is so sullen that you are not eating food?' So he said to her, 'Because I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite and said to him, Give me your vineyard for money, or else if you please, I'll give you a vineyard in its place.' But he said, 'I will not give you my vineyard.' Jezebel his wife said to him, 'Do you now reign over Israel? Arise, eat bread, and let your heart be joyful. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite.' So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, and sealed them with his seal, and sent the letters to the elders and the nobles who were living with Naboth in the city. And now she wrote in the letters, saying, 'Proclaim a fast, and seat Naboth at the head of the people, and seat 2 worthless men before him, and let them testify against him, saying, you curse God and the king, and then take him out and stone him to death.'" Yes, Jezebel, she's a real friendly sort. Ahab too, not the best. A tragic story. Just because somebody wants what somebody else has, and doesn't want to stop, doesn't want let anything keep them from getting it. Tragic story. But the fact of the matter is, it goes on every day in our lives. And people are addicts. Maybe it doesn't rise to the level of murder, but this is called what? We call this coveting. Coveting. It's the desire to have something or someone that belongs to another person. And that's the way life is in 21st century America, right? What was the original sin in the garden? Adam and Eve. What happened? You think about it. But what did coveting? They wanted something that they couldn't have. Something that God told them that they did not need. Yeah, and they bent the truth, did whatever they had to get there, you betcha. Yeah. We covet what we see every day. And yeah, coveting, right there involved the original sin there. They coveted, they wanted the forbidden fruit, and so they sinned against God. Well, God spoke to our wants and in our desires. Of course, that was in Genesis. If you look at Exodus, Exodus chapter 20, you're probably familiar with the Ten Commandments, I hope. Our world is not so much familiar with them anymore, but in Exodus chapter 20, verse 17, God writes it this way in commandment number 10, isn't it? You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Yeah. No society can thrive when it's eaten up with covetousness. See, the commandments were given by God at the time of Israel's founding, and God was giving the Israelites their constitution. He did it personally from Mount Sinai. This was the things that they needed to know, and right there amongst that was covetousness. Covetousness. It engrosses the heart. It eats at us and works away at us. Covetousness and it's one of those things that you can feed it, and it's like, anybody ever have a teenage son? They're never satisfied, right? They're never full. You can feed them, right? And maybe you think your husband's that way. Whatever it is, they're always wanting food. Covetousness is like that. It's never satisfied. If you jump to Ecclesiastes, or listen, I'll share with you Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 10 through 12, it describes it like this. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. This too is vanity. When good things increase, those who consume them increase. So what advantages is it to their owners except to look on? The sleep of the working man is pleasant, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich man does not allow him to sleep. Covetousness, not being satisfied, and there is no end to the desire, the seeking, the wanting. It just doesn't have an end there, and it's a heart problem that just continues to cause trouble. I'll just share some quickly with you here. In Mark chapter 7, verse 22, verse 23, you have this advice from the Gospel of Mark there. These deeds of coveting. Jesus is sharing with them, and he's talking to them, and it says, back in verse 20, he says, that which proceeds out of the man, that is what defiles the man. They're worried about what the person was eating. And in verse 22, Mark chapter 7, verse 22, deeds of coveting and wickedness, as well as deceit and sensuality, every slander, pride, and foolishness, all these evil things proceed from within and defile the man. This comes from the heart. This isn't just a vision problem. It's not just I see and I want it. It comes from deep within. And then Paul warns that what we covet becomes an idol. What it is that we're wanting to have, that which we desire, it becomes the idol that we chase after and we seek after. And so Paul says it this way in Ephesians. He said, "For this you know with certainty that no immoral or impure person or covetous man who is an idolater has an inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God." So he relates right there a covetous man who is an idolater. We think that idol worship is not something that we're involved in. But if you're coveting, Paul calls it idolatry. We're worshiping something that is not God. And so covetousness leads to injustice and oppression. It leads us to cheat people. And matter of fact, you can go through the Ten Commandments with this if you want. Because the list, well, if you're looking at the Ten Commandments, what we covet, it does become our idol. and leads to murder and desire and destruction, and can ruin marriages and ruin marriages. So what do we do? How do we do that? How do we fight covetousness? How do we put a stop to this vicious cycle? And how do we have it where our hearts are prepared to give thanks? So that's what we're going to concentrate on there, and that's what if you're trying to follow along in your bulletin there, that we're trying to pay attention to the right thing. We need to desire the right things then in the right way. We need to know that desire is not wrong. It's what we're desiring. It's that which we're concentrating on. God created us to have that desire. A person without desire is not a person. There's something wrong if you don't have desire. So we need to desire in the right way. We need to have desire for the right thing. We're pretty good at being shrewd and trying to figure things out, whatever. Before going to Europe on business, a man drove his Rolls Royce to a downtown New York City bank. He went in there and asked for a $5,000 loan, and they requested collateral. The man says, well, here's collateral. Here's the keys to my Rolls Royce. The loan officer had the car, and he put it in the underground parking for safekeeping, and he gave the owner the $5,000 advance there. 2 weeks later, he comes back and he says, well, that $5,000, well, the principal of that is $15.40 in interest. Pretty good interest there. So the man wrote out the check, got up to get away, and said, the loan officer said, well, I got to think while you're gone and trying to figure out what was going on here. You got a Rolls Royce. Why in the world, I found out you're a millionaire, why in the world did you have to borrow $5,000? Man smiled. Where else could I safely park my Rolls Royce in Manhattan for $15.40 for 2 weeks? Yeah. What is it you desire? What is it you're hoping for? How do we keep those desires in check? First of all, we desire the right things. What is it we desire? I don't know how to word that any better there. You come up with a better word. It's not a thing. We need to desire God, right? Take out the word things there. Let's just desire God. And Him at work and in our life, and Him taking care of us. We need to desire Him and His kingdom. We're desiring Him and God's approval in our lives, and desiring God and God at work in the lives of others around us. We need to desire the right way by avoiding excess and rejecting selfish desires and that which gets in the way of our growth. And to keep it in check, we need to do so by loving our neighbor. Do you have a good love for your neighbor there? And are you concerned about their needs? Look at Matthew chapter 22. It's a sword drill today. It's one of those times where there's just so many good verses I want to point out along the way here. Matthew chapter 22. And I get there, and then I remember the reason I wanted to turn to it was because there's so much going on here, and this is the law you're asking, teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? And you love those lawyer questions, right? Well, Jesus, the teacher here, has a great response. And he said to him, you remember this, verse 37? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. But Jesus, he doesn't hold back. He gives him that, but he gives him the next one as well. Let me give you the second one while we're at it here. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And then he goes on his way. And on these two commandments depends the whole law and the prophets right there. Love your neighbor. Are you one who loves your neighbor? Are you good at sharing it? You see, if you really love your neighbor, then when he drives home with that new camper behind his truck, or the new gleaming boat, and is getting ready to head out for the weekend, or he's fixing something really good on the smoker, and then instead of turning green with envy, you love them, you're happy for them. That's great. And maybe as you love that, maybe they'll share a little of that. But anyway, the desire is not for us to obtain what they have. The desire is to celebrate with them with the blessings that God has given them. Love our neighbor. Not seek after what they have. Not be jealous. Not be envious. And then we need to cultivate gratitude. We need to pay attention to what is going on. Psalms, talk about some beautiful words. I think Rachel picked out some songs this morning. They're praise songs, and just remind me of the beauty of the need to give thankfulness and thanksgiving. And one of them, I think, came from Keith Green, one that he sang. But from Psalm chapter 100, the reminder here that as we're in this, and all that we're doing, we've got to cultivate gratitude. We got to remember to be thankful. And it's crazy that we need the reminder, but it's so simple. You think about it. You're raising up little children, and what do you teach them? Don't forget to say thank you, right? How many times did your mom tell you that? How many times did you say that to your child? How many times should we say that to one another? And how many times should the preacher remind you to give thanks? Psalm chapter 100. Shout joyfully to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful singing. Verse 4 says, enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and bless his name. For the Lord is good. His loving kindness is everlasting, and his faithfulness to all generations. Yeah. Prepare for Thanksgiving. We got to fight covetousness. How do you fight covetousness? Well, it's kind of a cycle here, right? So you fight covetousness by sharing thanks, by being thankful, by growing in your gratitude, by cultivating that gratitude. Enter his gates with thanksgiving. And as we give thanks to him, and I left you behind, didn't I? There we go. We need to choose contentment. Choose contentment. And here, Paul is so good at doing this. In Philippians chapter 4, he reminds us of our need to practice what I said he has done so well. Philippians chapter 4, verse 10. You're familiar with these verses as well. You know verse 6, it's be anxious for nothing, right? And as you keep going in that, verse 10, Paul says, but I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at last you've renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you lacked opportunity. And then he continues to say, verse 12, I know how to get along by humble means, and I know how to live in prosperity in any and every circumstance. He's learned the secret to living this. In verse 13, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And keep looking there. Verse 19, and my God will supply all your needs according to his riches in glory in Christ Jesus. Choose contentment. Yeah. Contentment is a choice, and we've got to decide that we're going to wake up and we're going to be satisfied with what God has given us. We like to be optimistic. We like to think that things will get better. We like to think that things are going to improve and that good things will come our way. And God has blessed us in many ways, and he probably will continue to bless you in many ways. But at what point can you decide you got enough ducks in your closet and you can be happy with what you got? At what point can you find contentment? What does it take for you to be content? Man was tired of his friends who had all these nice homes. So he went to see a realtor and he put his home on the market and began to search for a new one. One day he was a little upset because he read the paper and he saw a listing for a home, and the real estate agent was supposed to be cluing him in on these. So he called, kind of an annoyance, and said, how come you didn't tell me about this one? And the realtor replied and said, sir, that is your house. That's the house we're trying to sell for you. Yeah. Contentment. Do you have it? And then one more thing. Generosity. Are you good at being generous? How many times have you seen in the news during COVID, these movie stars or somebody important to the tip that they left for a waitress, and how they've tried to bless somebody in some way. Think, well, that's simple. They got all kinds of money. They can do that. How about you? Are you good at being generous? See, we try to hoard and take in and keep in, and we want more, and we're afraid to give generously. Praise the Lord that God is not like that, because God gave everything for us. He gave His one and only Son for us, that we might have eternal life. And the problem we have is, as we see everything by human needs, and our human needs is, my pile is only this much, and it's not much of a pile. This is all I have to draw from, and when it's gone, it's gone. Think of that. You got to go through, you're thinking of retirement, you got to live, you got to have enough, all that. Remember, God works beyond what we have. See, when God's at work, it's the miracles that He's doing, but would it be so bad if we gave